Well, here we are back at the grinder again. What's going on? Well, I put her in the oven. I gave her a good temper. You can see a bit of that kind of gold straw color underneath the black bits. I just tempered the whole thing. I didn't do any softening on the grip, thinking that this is going to be, you know, a kitchen knife. It's not getting whacked a lot, hopefully. If it is, something's gone horribly awry. So I'm not worried about like vibration or resonance building up. But yeah, I went and scoured the internet looking for any information I could find. I was told by Ethan when we first started that, you know, a 5160 is a very forgiving steel, that it has a broad range of what you can do with it and temperatures you can work with it and all of that. Looking online, a lot of people were saying that it's actually a lot more particular than that, and it's an annoying, difficult steel to work with. I don't know. But a lot of people were saying that it is very susceptible to this de-carb, especially if it goes into the oil too hot, was my understanding. Watching back the video at the end there, it sounded pretty glassy. But as you can see by the filing here, I have played around with the file and I've been scratching at it. Essentially, all I've been able to do is a little surface damage to it. I tried to even file out the place on the tip where I banged it into a brick when it was hot, and I got part of it out, but not all of it, before it just hit a point where it didn't want to cooperate anymore. So the whole thing's a little, you know, caked with gunk. But at the same token, she's not biting. I even clamped her in a vise and went to town on the edge of it. And yes, I did scratch it up a bit, but like with my ulu, when I did that, it was practically sawing through it like it was, you know, softwood, and I had a nice hardened saw. So I'm going to give this a polish and see what we have when it's all said and done. So gonna give her a quick touch on the rough belt here to just kind of knock the majority of the scale and such off. I'm very concerned about how... Oh, that's another thing pushing here. I got a little bit of banana in it. It's very, very slight. But yeah, it droops downwards here. Almost imperceptibly. Like if I bend it the other way, as I have, I can do more. But anyway, very slight. I'm a little bit frustrated by it, but my imprecise attempts to straighten it with tongs were mostly successful, but not fully. I guess that's a good reason, or a good point towards doing it properly in a vise or on a straightening jig of some kind. Anyway, like I say, I'm going to give her a quick touch here, trying to figure out how best to hold this so that I can still feel it and make sure the temperature doesn't get too high. And then we'll jump onto the next belt and we'll move up, getting the blade polished up, and we'll go from there. It's common knowledge that the blacksmith's main tools are the forge, the hammer, and the anvil, and the knife maker's main tools are the grinder and abrasive belts. My time at the anvil really only turned a bar that was too thick and not wide enough into a bar that was still a bit thick in spots, but with the width to carve a knife out of. I think for future videos, I'll just leave a short clip of grinding in as a step reminder that I did the grinding here, and not show the whole routine. Since this one is essentially my first stock removal knife, I'm going to leave the vast majority of the grinding in, even if it is sped up by 10 times and my hand's in the way most of it. just to capture that feeling of all the particular and tedious work that goes into it. Well, she's definitely not the prettiest, and I spring tempered the very end of her, and because it's bananaed a bit, I have this chunk here that wasn't able to get out. Like I say, there's some rough spots still. Hiding in this rough spot is part of my touch mark. Yep, just under my finger there. This is why most people put it on the tang or the ricasso or whatnot, so you can actually, see it, and it isn't. I just thought if I hit it in this rough spot here, that would make the rough spot look more like a feature as opposed to a bug. I am not 100% sure what to think, honestly. She's very, very rough, but I think it's time to start working on figuring out how to get some scales out of the random shaped chunks that I have access to. Well, welcome to my spot on the floor upstairs. This is where I come whenever I need something that has to cure in temperature but also has a very stout smell, as you might notice. Oh, nope. There's the oil up here, which is what that cardboard's there for. Yeah, I've given everything a bit of a cleanup, wiped off with isopropyl, any kind of bit in there. I've cut some scales and got them all ready, got holes drilled and ready, pins to go with the said holes. There was a small problem. While this side came out okay, the other half had a bit of a crack, and when I was doing some sanding, well, it came apart. The proper thing to do, I suppose, would be to start all over from the beginning and cut fresh scales. Since I'm epoxying them to the handle, I'm going to epoxy these together anyway and just see what happens. I pretty much specifically asked for scraps, so the fact that there are cracks and thing, that's just sort of to be expected. Have my yogurt lid to hold everything, keep it from getting away. Oh, I have my gloves because I know otherwise I would get it all over myself. Have some plastic down too on top of the floor to make sure that I don't get any big old globs of epoxy on the floor, hopefully. Now, this is pretty nice, G-Flex epoxy here, well, nautical stuff, mixes 1-to-1. So, just kind of do something like, whoop. That looks like it might be about right. That's probably way more than I'm going to need, honestly. I didn't have any of the little plastic mixer spatulas, so wood it is. This has a pretty long work time and longer cure time, which if you're in a big hurry isn't so nice, but you know, when you're like, oh, I just want to casually work through here and get stuff done, well then yeah, it's rather nice. Crap. Can't feel which side that yeah, this side. I did not make enough epoxy, I can tell you that already. I have to say, I can't for the life of me remember if I'm supposed to do a layer on each side or just a layer on one side. From my reading though, it did say that it cures better when it's a little thicker layer, so I might just do a layer on everything and hope for the best. I forgot to bring anything to pull these out with though. Ah, crap. I touched the blade with epoxy on my fingers. I mean, there's epoxy all over the grip too. I personally find that to be less of an issue as that's all going to get sanded off. And I will be wearing, you know, I'll be wearing my little respirator there and hoping that it's enough. It's a good thing it has a long working time, because it sure is taking me long to work with it. Okay. I suppose this goes to the old adage of mix up more than you think you're going to need. And still goes to the adage of mix up more than you think you'll need. I also meant to bring my little hammer up here to make sure that I got those pins driven in. Fresh gloves. Had I been smart, I would have wrapped the blade before this. I need to wrap it anyway before I go shaping the handle, and if I would have wrapped it ahead of time, I would have had less concern about getting epoxy on it. Oh well, live and learn, right? That's this whole thing's a learning process. That's the goal there. Okay. Do I have enough room to get you in between here? Always have trouble at these awkward angles. Since I have epoxy oozing out of that crack now, I think that is much better than it was before. There we go, tripod. For better or worse, that needs to cure a little bit. I suspect I will see you back at the belt sander. So we have wrapped the blade, we have glued down all of the scales. I've sort of filed the pins so they're a little bit closer so I won't be heating them up too much. While I was doing all this, I discovered something. There's kind of a V in there between the scales, you know? I have all these super flat, roughed up surfaces so the epoxy will stick to them on the outside. I put the scales on the wrong side. Well, I'm not sure how I managed that, but something had to go wrong, right? So, I have a dirty old rough belt here. The first thing I'm going to do is catch the wood, match it up to the metal, because you can see there's a hole here. That shouldn't be there. So I'm going to polish the wood down a little bit, polish off these. Going to kind of make it into an octagonal, roughly, by sanding off the corners. And from there will be a lot of just going off feel and what feels best in my hand. Honestly, for a lot of that feeling part, I won't even be looking at it. You'll be looking at it for me, I suppose. But I will put my face mask on since I don't want to be sucking up, I want to suck up as little of this epoxy dust as I possibly can. So we will get started. Well, time to give it a sharpen now. Little divot here that just doesn't want to catch. It dips a little bit so it's not sharpening with the rest. So I have a huge divot in here, which means either this end needs trimmed down or this end needs trimmed down. I'm going to run back down to the belt grinder and do a little bit of profiling, a little remodifying. The whole point of making this new knife is to fill a gap in the kitchen knife collection. We have these two old hickories here, and this is kind of my paring knife to the next step up as far as blade size goes. So as you can see, we have a old reasonable paring knife, just good for the little cutting and whatnot. And then we move up to this pretty heavy duty knife here. This is great for parting out a semi-frozen chicken. You know, it's robust enough and sharp enough that you can like work the tip in between a joint and kind of give her a little pop. Nice and easy. But for smaller things, when this one's awaiting a wash or a sharpen or something, this is our next go-to. So I have made this one here, which if you line them up blade-wise, is right in between. It's also much thinner. Well, somewhat thinner. But definitely a lot more slender in blade profile. So we have a alternative paring knife. Since last time I gave it a little touch up on the grinder to get this curve that was, or the divot that was here, get the front tip balanced out a bit to catch it. And yeah, we are, my vision up where I can see, pretty reasonable there, I would say. A nice clean cut pretty much all the way across. As you can see, I've oiled her up, so we get a nice bit of sheen. I'm kind of sad that the grain pattern of the handle sort of got burnt away. Even doing a little sanding afterwards, I probably should have dropped down and used a rougher grit than I did to try to clean off the burnt spots and open it back up so it looked pretty again. Here we have an apple. Let's get a good angle on that. As you can see, so if I'm trying to cut through with the paring knife, I have to be very, very careful and like cut and wiggle and wobble. But with this, whoop, it should be as simple as, well, rolling the apple away. Trying to do this with the camera in my face is tricky. Yeah, a little push. Ooh, that's a bit more of a push than I would expect. Probably because despite the edge being thin, the backside is still rather thick. Oh my goodness. That is poor blade geometry right there. Yeah, that did not go anywhere near as smoothly as I would like. Right. Feel a lot more confident choking up the grip on this than I do that big one for whatever reason. I couldn't say why, as I still have fingers on the edge. Oh, that's just a little dab to the flour. There's still the uncertainty in my mind as to whether or not the temper took, or heck, even the hardness took. I mean, we're harder than our apples, which isn't saying much for a knife. Harder than the seeds. But really, it will take time to figure that stuff out. Like, how often do I have to sharpen it? Am I going to need to sharpen it after cutting these apples, for example? Wow. Wow, that is running smooth, eh? I'm sure there's everybody, get your fingertips out of there. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I probably could have done a more aggressive bevel on it. For example, if this bevel, instead of being roughly down the middle, more ran up more along the back, as I had originally lined up and then didn't quite carve to, that would give it a lot more, or a lot better geometry where it doesn't go so heavy so quick, and it would cut easier. But that's always a good thing to learn. Get the appropriate geometry for the planned use of your knife. For now though, I think this will work well for me. And we'll use this a while and see how well it holds up. Well, here we are again. All in all, I would say that this knife went much better than the last knife for sure. While it's maybe not the prettiest and the bevels aren't perfect, that was, like I say, my first time trying to mark where I wanted my bevels to go as opposed to just freehanding the whole thing and then doing my best to make a match. I learned some things, namely, be very particular about the purpose you're planning to put your knife to and make sure the edge geometry and blade geometry is correct for that situation. As we saw here, it's a little too wedge shaped to just sort of, yeah, I can't really get a good shot with this, to almost push through an apple or to gently slice through. The edge is sharp, but it goes from being very sharp to very thick too soon. Even if it was as thick as it is at the edge, if the bevel moved back that quarter inch or so, that would give a much smaller angle to it. So it would be less to overcome quicker. The vast majority of the cutting power of any given knife is the blade geometry. Steel and all of that, whatever, that's mostly how hard is it, how durable is it likely to chip, is it going to hold the edge for a long time, that kind of thing. But it's the shape that actually cuts. Even though so many weird little things went wrong with this one, like putting the scales on the wrong side, and that freak out, that concern that I had with the heat treating, getting it correctly hard, and then just little things like having that little divot in this section here that I had to go back and readjust the blade slightly on the belt grinder or file it away by hand till the seas take the shore again. But in the end though, I have a reasonably handsome and definitely workable knife. How much alteration I might see myself doing to it, we'll see. It might just grind away a bit as I sharpen it over the years. For now, we're going to call that quits. Please like if you like, don't if you didn't, and leave me a comment. Were you sad to see my belts burn the wood a little bit and make it ugly and dark and hide that beautiful grain pattern that it had? I know I am. As always, have a wonderful day.